Hi everyone and welcome to the Global Azure Bootcamp 2021 session, Modernize Your Application Configuration with Microsoft Azure. I'm Firas Mdimagh, Azure Technical Trainer at Microsoft. I'm a former software engineer, cloud and DevOps consultant, and I was also Microsoft MVP. I am an MCT, Microsoft Certified Trainer, and I have few Microsoft certifications such as Azure Administrator, Developer, DevOps Engineer Expert, and Solution Architect Expert also. During this session, we'll discover some Azure services and find out how to use them in order to modernize our application configuration. We'll start with the first service, which is Azure App Configuration. Then we'll move to the second service, which is Azure Key Vault. Then we'll end by knowing about how to use both services together with managed identities for Azure services. So let's get started with the first part. We need to know that each application contains two types of parameters. The first one, which is the normal parameters, right? The second one are, let me use the right color. The second one are the secrets. Both types can be used and usually, as a best practice, should be stored in an external provider, an external service. And Azure provides us with those services. For the first one, for the normal here parameters, we can use Azure App Configuration. And for the second one, for the secrets, we can use Azure Key Vault service here in order to manage this type of parameters. Let's take simple example of parameters. For the normal one, let's say we need to have the name of our database, and this is what we'll be seeing during the demo. And the second one will be the DB password, right? So let's try to understand more how to manage both services and how to integrate this in our application. Azure App Configuration is one of the services that let us manage our application configuration like the name indicates. So it's a service to centrally manage application settings and also feature flag. So here we identify two features. And it contains flexible representations and mappings. It contains also tagging with labels, and it has a dedicated UI for feature management for feature flag management. And when trying to add configuration or app configuration store to the application, we can do that using the client library provided by Microsoft. We have some client providers, for example, for .NET Core, for .NET, for Spring Cloud, and for other languages and frameworks, we can use the REST API also. Then, when trying to store and manage our application settings, we are creating keys and values. So keys serve as identifiers for key values and are used to store and retrieve corresponding values. It can be something like this. For the key, like this schema, app name, service1, endpoint. And the second one, for example, app name, service2, API endpoint. Then, of course, the value. And optionally, we can also add labels that are used to differentiate key values with the same key. For example, we can have the same key that is used in different environments, like here, test, staging, and production, or also to differentiate versions of our application. So let's try to create an Azure App configuration directly from the Azure portal and add it to our application, of course. So from the portal here, we're trying to create our app configuration. So here we have the service app configuration. We need to create it. When creating it, we need to select, as always, the subscription, the resource group, the name, which must be unique, globally unique, the location, and the pricing tier, free or standard. Free and standard, the difference between both is the storage and the number of requests also. So I have already created one here, and we have this app configuration here. First of all, we need to choose one of the options in order to connect to this app configuration. We can use the RBAC, right, with the identities, or we can also use the keys. For the RBAC here, for the role assignment, we have two roles that are dedicated to this service, which are here the owner and the data reader. Then for the keys, almost the same idea, but with keys, we have the keys for the read-write and the keys for the read-only here. Then we have the two features here, the Configuration Explorer, Configuration Manager, and the Feature Manager. Let's start with the Configuration Explorer and to add at the beginning this link or this connection to our application. So here from our application, first of all, we need to add the package, all right, which is Microsoft Azure.app configuration.ASP.NET Core, since our application here is an ASP.NET Core app 3.1, and we have another package Azure.identity, since in our case we're not using the keys but we're using an identity in order to access this. So in Azure AD we created an identity here. Let me show it to you. So here we created an identity, and this identity has a key, right? So we got the key, we got the credentials, application ID, client ID, and the tenant ID. Then we add this to our properties here, all right, in order to use it later. We'll see how to use this. And we also add in the configuration, in the app configuration here, the access control, the role assignment, we add this app as an app configuration data editor, right? So now this Azure AD identity has access to this. And now from our application, we add this. Then in the program.cs, we added this. So we add this connection, right? Add Azure app configuration, connect using an endpoint, right? We'll get it later. Then we said that we need to use the default Azure credential that we just put in the settings, in the properties of this project, right? Then we said that we need to get those settings, and in particular we need to refresh, all right? So here we're refreshing, we're using the dynamic settings, right? It's for test purposes, of course, every 10 seconds we'll try to get this setting with this key, gap21 settings DB name. If there is a new version, we'll just get it and use it in our application. So we can do it like this for only one settings, or we can also do it for all the settings, or for only one settings. If it changes, we got all the settings also with the refresh all true. Then in the startup also we added this. So we said that we need to configure. Here it's in general, not only app configuration. So we need to have this section, right? This can be used even without app configuration. Then we said that we will add Azure app configuration here, and we'll use Azure app configuration also. All right. So this is to start. Then what we did is this one. So we have this class, right? Here. With DB name, DB password, it's called settings. We're using it in order to get those settings. And in the home controller here, we use the settings here, dependency injection. We get the settings, and then we get the DB name, DB password, and push it to the view here. And in our view, if we check it here, we are just showing database name, database password, right? So here to start, we need to add this connection. So we add those in the properties with the identity, the Azure identity or app registration. Then in the app settings, what we need is the app config endpoint. And we have here a simple settings with the DB name, DB password, just in case there is nothing in the app configuration, and this will be the first part, right? Then we'll get nothing. So first of all, we need to have the endpoint. Let's copy paste it here, and now we have this connection with the identity in order to get the settings from this app configuration. Let's run our app. Let's run here, and let's try to see what can we have and what can we get here. All right, so here we have the application that is up and running. All right, and here we can get the database. You can see that we got the database name, database password, but those are the local values. All right, in order to get the values from app configuration, we need to add it here. So we use app configuration here with the first feature. We create a key value. Let's name it here db name, right, and have 21 db, right. Let's apply, and here we can run it again, run our application here again, and we can check if we have now this. So it's happening here. Let's try to make sure that we're getting the right one. Yeah, why do we have here? Here we added value with db name, but in our application we said that we have here a key that is gap21 settings db name. All right, so let's just remove this one and add the key value, right, gap21 settings, then db name, and the value is gap21 db. All right, and now let's try to see what we have, right? And here we just refreshed without restarting our application. We have the gap21 db, all right, that we're getting. So this value is was got from Azure app configuration. This one is local. All right, so this is the first feature here in app configuration. All right, we can also use the second feature, which is the feature management, or the feature here toggle, or the feature flag, and go back to our app. So let me close this one, close the folder here, and bring the second project where we added here the feature management, right? So here what we added is this one. So we need to add this package, right, feature management.espnet core, in order to manage the features here inside our code. It's an ASP.NET Core, right? Then in the program.cs we added this section to tell our app to use feature flags, also to get the feature flags from app configuration, and same for the refresh. So we get every 10 seconds also, so just for test purposes, we're getting the new version, if there is a new version or new status, right? So this is to add. Then in the startup also we added this in the configure sources.add feature management service. Then what we need to do is add this feature manager here in our app configuration, right? Let's add this. Let's name it beta here. So we can enable it. We can add filters for information, filters for targeting groups and users, time window to enable it, for example, during the weekends for test purposes, or custom. We can have our custom filters here. So let's just add this, and now we have our beta feature. Then in our code, what we added here is in the controller, we add the beta controller, which contains this, and here we have this annotation saying feature get feature flags dot beta. Here in the modules we have app feature flag, which contain this one, right? Then this is to enable it, right, or disable it. It depends on what we have in app configuration. Then in the views, it's the same here. We have the beta in the here index to just show it, right? So it's related to the controller, and we have this menu. We need to show the beta in the menu. So it's in the views, shared here, the layout, and we're adding this in the list, right? We had in the list home and privacy. Now we have in the list also this one, which is called beta, but it's feature and it's related to beta. If it's enabled, so it will be shown, otherwise it will be hidden. Now we have this, and let's try to run. So it's the same, it's based on the same configuration that we tried in the first module, right? So .NET run here, and let's see what do we have. So here we have this, right? Now we have home and privacy, right? We don't have beta. Let's enable here beta from the portal. So here we have this. We have the page, and here we need to refresh, and now we can see it. All right. So now we have beta, and we have /beta. We can access it since we enabled this from the portal directly. All right. So this is for the feature manager and how to add it directly in our application. So let's move to the second service, which is Azure Key Vault. Azure Key Vault is another Azure service that will let us centralize application secrets, monitor access and use of those secrets, and of course it stores securely secrets and keys. And it is simplified administration of application secrets that we can integrate it with other sources. For example, if an app service wants to retrieve or get keys from the Azure Key Vault, it can be integrated directly with it. And we use Azure Key Vault in order to securely store and tightly control access to tokens, password, API keys, and other secrets. It can be also used as a key management solution, and we can even use it to easily provision, manage, and deploy public and private TLS SSL certificates for use with Azure and internal connected sources. So let's do the same with our application and try to use the secrets management in our application in order to add the DB password directly in Azure Key Vault, then integrated with our application. First of all, we need to create the Key Vault. From the portal here, we can create a new Key Vault instance. We need here the subscription resource group, the Key Vault name, which is to be globally unique, the region, the pricing tier, standard or the premium. The premium includes the support for HSM, bucket keys, right? And here for the hardware security module, we can also manage the days to return deleted vaults. The soft delete now is enabled, and we can also manage the purge protection. Then we need to manage the access policies. In fact, in order to access to Key Vault, there is another level of authorization, right? Since we're talking about managing secrets, keys, and certificates here. And we can manage this via the integrated Vault access policy, or we can also use the predefined role-based access control. Even with this, with the role-based access control, with the RBAC, we need to define also another role assignment related to Key Vault access, right? So I've already done this. Here I have a Key Vault, and what I've done is I created a new role assignment and I added the same here app, and I added as a Key Vault secret user. It means that the application that will use this identity can access the Key Vault in order to read the secrets, right? So here it was added. Then in Key Vault we have the three types. We have the keys, the secrets, and the certificates. In our case, we're using the secrets in our application. We need to add the secret, right? And here I have this message saying that I cannot access. So I need to add also a role assignment for the current user, even if it's an owner or administrator in general. So I need to add this this role, secrets officer here, to manage the key vault secrets here. All right. So after a few seconds, we need just to wait a little bit, and then we will have access, or we can add the secrets. Right. It will be db password, and let's name it 21 at 123. For example, you can see what do we have here. All right. And here we go. So let's try to create it. And here we created our db password secret, and we can see it. We have the versions also in Key Vault, right? We can have many versions. We can enable one or many, and we can see the value directly here from the port, right? In our case, we need to have it back from our application. So go back to our application. Let me just again close this one and bring the Key Vault project right here. So here in the Key Vault project, what do we have in the program, or in the in the home control at the beginning? Let's start by this. Here we added this, right? Secret client. We need the URI of the Key Vault. The default Azure credentials, the same credentials that we used before with the Azure app configuration, using the identity that we created and give it access to Azure Key Vault. And then said that we need to retrieve this db password, get secret, and we need to get this, and then we'll pass it directly to the view as before. But now we need to have the setting from the Key Vault instance, which is gap at or gap 21 at 123, not local. All right. So let's try to do this. And first of all, we need to go to the overview of the Key Vault, copy the Vault URI, go back to the home controller here, and paste the URI here. All right. And let's try to run this application. Again, .NET run, and here the idea would be to do the same thing, the first part with app configuration to get the DB name and to get the DB password directly from the URL. So what do we have here? Yeah, sure, because here I removed this. Yeah, I don't know why I did this, but let me just bring it back here, and here we go. So now we have no problem. This was just at the beginning, like the previous demos. All right. So now we have this, and we'll try to get here. So the DB name, we're getting this from app configuration, and this from the Key Vault, right? So here we're having this directly here. All right. So this one is from app configuration, and this one is from Key Vault. All right. What we can do also, last thing that we can do with app configuration and Key Vault is, instead of getting this from, let me shut down the app, instead of getting this reference from the Key Vault directly, what we can do is remove all of this, right? And we can say that we'll get this from the settings.db password like before, right? So until this step, we're getting this from the local, right? Because we don't have this in Azure app configuration. What we can do is add a reference, right? So from the Azure app configuration here, we can create a new here, but this time not key value, but Key Vault reference, right? We can reference the key in another Key Vault. Let's name it db password, or use the same schema, right? Gap 21 settings db password. Then we're saying we're getting this from a key vault, right? Secret here, which secret and which version. Let's say it's the latest version. And here we're adding a reference from the key vault. It doesn't mean that app configuration is getting the value. It's only referencing here secret in key vault. All right, so it's not the value. How can we get the value? So here to start, so in the home control everything is okay. In the program.cs we need to add this configure key vault. Then we need to add the credential, set the credential, default Azure credential at the beginning. We are using this app. All right, so here now we're ready, and let's try to run this app again. So here what we're doing at the beginning, we're connecting our application to Azure App Configuration. We're getting everything from app configuration. One of the values that we're getting is, of course, the reference, right? The DB name and the reference of the DB password. Then the app is trying to get also the value directly from key vault, right? So let's try to do it here. Run the application and let's see what we have. And now we can get the password. Grab 21 at 123. This one is from Key Vault also. All right. So this is how we can use Key Vault. So as standalone directly from our application to Key Vault, or by getting the reference from app configuration also, which is possible and integrated. The idea is that we're integrated in the connector of our application with app configuration when starting the app. All right. So this is for this demo. We can of course add other or use other features in Azure to make it simple for us, and this is what we'll be doing in the next part. And the last service that we're discovering in this session is the Azure Managed Identity. Azure Managed Identities for Azure resources eliminate the need for developers to manage credentials. Applications may use the managed identity to obtain Azure AD tokens. For example, in an app service, we can deploy our application to Azure App Service and tell our application to use the identity of this service instead of creating an identity for the application itself. We have two types of managed identities. We have the system assigned managed identities that enable a managed identity directly on a service instance. We access to this service and we enable the managed identity. The second type is user assigned. We create a managed identity as a standalone resource. Then we tell the services or the resources in Azure to use this identity in order to access other services. So the big differences between both is this. So here what we can have the system assigned managed identity and the user assigned managed identity. Let's take an example of what we will be doing. So here we have an app service, right? We have our here app service, right? And our app service needs to access to our Key Vault and also to our app configuration, right? So the idea here would be to enable the managed identity directly here, right, in the service, and then give access to the app configuration and to the Key Vault. So here, when using the system assigned managed identity, we're enabling at the system level, and that means when we are deleting the service, we're also deleting this identity. On the other hand, when using the user assigned managed identity, let's take the same example here, but let's say that we have first app service, right? And we have another app service, maybe, or other service in general. And here, both services wants to access to key vault and app configuration also. So the idea would be to create this identity, this managed identity, right? Let me just keep it here smaller. The user assigned managed identity, then we'll tell the first service and the second service to use this identity, and from this identity we'll add the role assignment. So the role assignment is related to the managed identity, not to the service directly. So here, if we delete the first service or the second service, we still have this managed identity, this user assigned managed identity, since it's a standalone resource in Azure. So let's try to do the same with the system assigned managed identity in our case in order to deploy our application, right? So in our case, we'll be using here our application, right, that we just developed. Then we'll push it to Azure. Here in Azure, we'll have our app service, right? Here, let's say this is our app service. We'll have also, and of course, our key vault and also our app configuration, right? So here we'll deploy our application there, right? And we'll here configure the managed identity, we'll enable it, and then we'll try to access to the key vault and the app config using the identity of the service, which is called the managed identity. In our case, it's a system assigned managed identity instead of managing this inside our application. All right, so let's try to do this in the demo here. The first thing is to deploy our application, right? So here we can deploy it. Let me just shut it down. I've already created an app service here. All right, I have this app service. It contains nothing, simple page. So let's try to deploy it here directly from Visual Studio Code. So deploy to web. Then, all right, let's add the configuration. Which app? Let's choose this one, since I've already created this connection between Visual Studio and the account used here. Let's click on deploy, and now we're trying to deploy from our here app from VS Code here, just to see VS Code, right, to our app service. This is the first step, and this is done. So it was done. All right, great. Let's try to refresh. But here we'll have an error. Let's wait for deployment. Starting our website here. Now we have this error saying that there is in process, but this is obvious since what we've been using in local here is related to this, right, to this app. We can also use it in our app service, right, or in our application, let's say. But what we can do, there is a better way here, which is the managed identity. At the app service level, we have this. We can find this section in many Azure sources. It's called identity. This is the managed identity. We have both user assigned or managed assigned, or system assigned, I mean. In the system assigned, we just need to enable it, right? It's related to the same life cycle as the service. Here we enable it. At the end, we're creating an identity in the Azure AD, of course, right? But there is an abstraction here, and it's simple for managing. So here we just enable it, and we need to, of course, add a role assignment in both key vault and here key vault and app configuration with the managed identity that we just created. So let's do this. Let's go back to the app configuration, the access control. Here, let's add a role assignment. In this case, data reader, and we're not using here directly an identity from Azure ID, user group, or service principal, but it's a system assigned and it's app service here. And here, Azure directed that we have this managed identity. So we'll add this here, right? So we can see it here, managed identity. And we need to do the same also in the key vault instance. Let's add here service, app service. Let's select this, and the role will be the secret user to read the secrets. All right. So now we have both, right? And let's try to restart our application and see what do we have in few seconds. So here, after a few minutes, we can refresh the page, and now we have the database name that we're getting from the Azure app configuration and the database password that we're getting from Key Vault, and everything is in Azure in the cloud, and we're using also our application is using the managed identity, the identity of the server or of the service that is hosted inside. All right. So this is how we can do it. Why we need to wait a few minutes? In fact, when we're adding a role assignment at the app configuration level, we need to wait about 15 minutes in order to let the role assignment or and the permissions propagate. All right. So this is the idea here. This is how we can do implement the whole process using Azure app configuration, Azure Key Vault, and both with Azure Managed Identity also. So thank you very much for joining this session. I hope you enjoyed it. We discovered how to add or how to use Azure app configuration from our application directly to manage application settings, to manage secrets with Azure Key Vault, and to use managed identity directly from a server in Azure with the system assigned managed identity with Azure App Service also, and we deploy the application directly. So you can find all the resources via this link, aka.ms/FirasGab21. You can try it yourself, of course. If you have any feedback, please do not hesitate. So enjoy the rest of the Global Azure Bootcamp. Bye-bye.